Good morning. We welcome this new day we received with hymn number 1003, Where Do We Come From, with words by Paul Gauguin and Brian Tate and music by Brian Tate. Please make sure your microphone is muted and sing along enthusiastically from home. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Gwinnett. My name is Elna Brennestad, my pronouns are she, hers, and it is my great pleasure to lead this worship service today while Reverend Jan is on sabbatical. She will return to the pulpit March 13th. If you have a chalice at home to light with me in a few minutes, please have it ready. We arrive from many places and many life experiences as we gather to recall our true selves, reflect on the meaning of our lives, and explore questions of ultimacy together. We are a people who are new to Unitarian Universalism and people who are lifelong Unitarian Universalists. We are people of many religious beliefs and spiritual practices. We affirm and promote the responsible search for truth and meaning. We are people of many genders, sexualities, ethnicities, origins, ages, shapes, sizes, and expressions of our true selves. We affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people. We are people of all ages and family structures, and we each bring gifts, talents, and passions that serve to affirm and promote communities with peace, liberty, and justice for all. We are a people of covenant who engage with one another in ways that promote and affirm justice, equity, and compassion in human relationships. We are people who care deeply for our planet and understand we are inextricably and profoundly connected to the web of all existence. We are a people who welcome all who are seeking a community of faith that welcomes your whole self, all that you were, all that you are, all that you yearn to be. And you are just where you should be, in a room full of compassionate, thoughtful Unitarian Universalists ready to meet you where you are. You are welcome here. You are home. If you are a newcomer this morning, we welcome you and hope that you will indeed find your spiritual home here with us. We are becoming a radically welcoming sanctuary in a green space. We foster spiritual growth as we joyfully nurture connections and community within our walls and beyond. If this is your first time here, I encourage you to join us several times to experience the full flavor of this congregation and this faith tradition. Come be curious, courageous, and passionate with us. Let's take a deep breath together to become more fully present in this precious time we've set aside this week. Breathe deep. As sound vibrates through us and around us, may we be reminded how deeply and profoundly interconnected we are with one another, all humanity, all beings, all living things, and all the stars in the cosmos. Today's opening words are "We Bid You Welcome" by Richard S. Gilbert. We bid you welcome who come with weary spirits seeking rest, who come with troubles that are too much with you, who come afraid and hurt. We bid you welcome, who come with hope in your heart, who come with anticipation in your step, who come proud and joyous. We bid you welcome, who are a seeker of new faith, who come to probe and explore, who come to learn. We bid you welcome, who enter this hall as a homecoming. We have found here room for your spirit, who finds in this people a family. Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are on your journey, we bid you welcome.
Good morning. For our chalice lighting, a piece by Odette Fulbright-Fulson. This light we kindle is set in the lamp of our history. We inherit this free faith from the brave and the gentle, fierce and outspoken hearts and minds that have come before us. Let us be worthy inheritors of this faith, and through our good works, pass it boldly on to a new generation.
And now it's time to find out what's in the Wonder Box. So here we have a young girl named Helen. And here we have her grandfather. He may look a little bit like William Shakespeare, but his name is Grandpa Joe. So, what's all this about with Helen and Grandpa Joe? Well, Helen lived with her mother in the city, where she went to school and had many friends. She enjoyed her life there, with buses to get places and many interesting museums and parks to visit. What she always looked forward to, though, was getting to visit her Grandpa Joe. Technically, he was Mom's stepdad, but to Helen, he had always been Grandpa Joe. He lived in a big old house. It was 6 hours away from the city. It was more or less in the middle of nowhere. Each room in the house had all different kinds of books and pictures and knickknacks, and Helen loved exploring the house and hearing all the strange and marvelous tales about all the exciting things her grandfather had inside. Each and everything in Grandpa Joe's house, from statuette to grand piano, was something with an interesting story about how or why he had gotten it. Her favorite story, though, was about the watermelon-sized golden apple he had gotten because he saved a lot of people from starving. Helen wanted to be just like him when she grew up. Maybe she could find a way to make trees grow more fruit, or find a way to make crops grow faster. Grandpa Joe even helped her to read books about how to grow things when she told him she wanted to grow up to be like him, and as she grew, the books grew with her. She did have to explore the library herself to find them. Really, Helen just wanted to know every story about everything in the house and everything that Grandpa Joe had done, so she explored it all. Except the closed door. It was the one room in the house she was not allowed into. It was a small door right beside the pantry in the kitchen, and Grandpa Joe usually had several large stacks of potatoes stacked in front of it. When Helen was very small, she had asked her mom and Grandpa Joe why she couldn't go in the door. Was it dangerous? Was there a monster there? No, it's not dangerous. It's just something for when you're older, Grandpa Joe had said. There are no monsters or animals or people there, are there? Helen asked. No, just things. Don't worry, said her mom. Sorry, something started beeping. So one night, when Helen was 14, she was having trouble sleeping. It was the 3rd of July, and her mom usually came down to the house for the 4th of July, but she'd gotten a new job and she couldn't make it this year. She was still looking forward to going to Grandpa Joe's neighbor's house for the 4th of July, though. Well, she decided that she was going to go down into the kitchen and make a cup of chamomile tea. She was 14, so she's old enough to do that, right? Well, when she got to the kitchen, she noticed that the stack of potatoes that was usually in front of the door was not there. The door had a light under it. "Grandpa Joe?" she called out softly. Was he in there? There was no answer. She walked over to the door. She knew she wasn't supposed to go in, but they said it wasn't dangerous. She approached slowly. Finally, she got the door open. He wasn't in there. There wasn't very much at all in there, honestly. It was a very small room, almost as small as the pantry. There was just a table with a notebook and a photo album atop it. Helen went to open the photo album, but she found that she didn't know any of the people inside, and none of the people really looked like her relatives. They also didn't look happy. "Helen, what are you doing in here?" came a voice from the door. "Grandpa Joe, I'm sorry, I just wanted some water. Helen, calm down, it's okay. I was just startled. I didn't expect you to be up. It's nearly midnight." He came into the room and stood beside Helen, opening the notebook. Unlike Helen, though, Grandpa Joe could clearly read what was written there. Helen couldn't read it because it wasn't in English. Grandpa Joe said, "Bring that photo album and come with me to the living room. I'll tell you what this is all about. You know that I used to live in another country. Food was going bad there more quickly than it should. There was a mold destroying crops before they could be harvested. I was in charge of figuring out how to make a chemical that could kill that mold, but not kill the plants. The problem was we already had a chemical that could do that. Chemical Z. It let the crops grow just fine. But it changed something about them. Plants that had been treated with it could survive the mold, but then humans couldn't digest that food. Obviously, we could have food no one could eat, or no food and no one could eat. Eventually, after years of hard work, we were able to change that chemical into something that was safe for both the plants and the people. The country recovered from the famine. Ultimately, that work saved millions who would have starved to death otherwise. We worked hard to change the chemical, but we didn't really follow good testing procedures. In fact, there were some people who had tested the chemical that we were trying to make safe, and it wasn't safe. See, in the old country that I lived in, people tended to think that there are just some people who are truly bad because of who their parents are, who they fall in love with, and these bad people aren't really worth anything. It must not matter what the so-called good people do, right? No. All of the pictures in the room behind the closed door are people who became very sick from my experiments with Chemical Z. I know that eventually I saved many, many people by making sure there was enough food to eat. But I can't forget that by trying to do good in one way, I did terrible things in another way. Your grandmother helped me see that what I did to those bad people in my old country was wrong. But there's nothing I can do. My old country won't let you come back once you've moved, and the people I gave the bad version of Chemical Z to have been dead for years. I can't make it up to anybody. There's no one to apologize to. Helen didn't know what to make of all this. Her grandfather, her beloved grandfather, the man who'd saved so many people, had done this. She just stayed silent. They agreed to talk about it in the morning. When Helen came down, her grandfather had already set the table for breakfast. He'd finished his, and she started hers. They stayed silent. As she finally finished her last bite, Grandpa Joe started to talk, but she interrupted. "Grandpa Joe, I've been thinking about what you said last night, about hurting those people. I still love you. Mom doesn't need to come and get me or anything. If I was one of the people or their family, I know I'd probably feel really mad, but I'm not, and I know that you didn't want to do bad. You thought you were doing right. And you learned that it was wrong eventually. You're not going to pretend it was okay or that people starving makes it okay. If you'd told me when I was a little kid, I might not have understood, but now I do. You're still my Grandpa Joe, and I wouldn't trade you for the world. Thank you, Helen, he said roughly. Come on, Grandpa Joe. I love you, and I'm glad you finally told me. But we've got to go help the neighbors set up their 4th of July party. And that's today's Wonderbox Wisdom. If you will now please join me in singing hymn 347, Gather the Spirit, with words and music by Jim Scott. Please do make sure your microphone is muted.
What Happens When Our Heroes Have Flaws by Todd Bryson. When I worked in a summer camp, we often had theme dress days. For Christmas days, you'd wear all your Christmas accessories. For Disney Day, you'd dress as a prince or princess or something. For Donald Trump Day, you'd all wear ridiculous hairpieces and throw money at everything. The week we held Hero Day, one camper with a level of adorable that was actually fairly common at that age came as her father. Eyes aglow, she told me all about his career with the Tennessee Titans. Physician, not a player. How wonderful he was and how she loved him more than anything else. And I couldn't help but be sad for her, because in a few years all that would change. And as she grows up, she'll see his mistakes, his flaws, his imperfections. He will become an obstacle to her adulthood, and she will hate him for that. And finally, she'll see him just as he is. Just another person who happened to be on the planet at the same time as she is. What will have happened to his hero status? Doesn't this happen to all of us? At some point in time, we realize our idols are just, well, human. There is nothing super about them. So then what is the point of a role model? Once that illusion is shattered, once the hero wall comes crumbling down, can we still truly look up to anyone? And the short answer is yes. And the long answer, when the curtain is pulled back and we see the true nature of our heroes, when we see them stumble and fall, that makes them even more super than they were in the first place. Because now they are just ordinary people. Those firefighters in your area, ordinary people. Those athletes you look up to, ordinary people. Your parents, ordinary people. Tony Robbins, Tiger Woods, Hillary Clinton, Beyonce, ordinary people. Far from being discouraging, this is an unbelievably enlightening point. Do you know who else is just another ordinary person? You. But unlike a LeBron James or an Amy Poehler, you have bought into a lie that ordinary is a bad thing. You believe your heroes are somehow more worthy than you, or that they've been given a gift you haven't. Certainly, some people start out in a better place in life than others. But as I've pointed out before, it's not up to you where you start. It's wonderful to be an ordinary person. In fact, it's one of the best things you can be. Because guess what you get to do if you're an ordinary person? Get better. Grow your talents. Increase your knowledge. Take action. Earn more money. Pour love into others. The overnight success is a myth. Your heroes didn't just wake up with an extraordinary talent. They just took another step forward, and another step forward, and another step forward. After a certain point, something happens, something you wouldn't expect because you've been too busy taking that step forward. You become extraordinary. And now we will sing hymn number 1012, When I Am Frightened, on your Zoom machine.
When I am frightened, will you reassure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? This hymn we just heard is framed as a child's plea for help and guidance from an adult. But what do you do if you're an adult and you're afraid and you kind of want to go to an adultier adult, as we millennials often say? Well, we go back to our history. I mean, today we're dealing with racial injustice, but back then we were dealing with slavery and Jim Crow laws. They managed to start us down the path towards getting rid of racially motivated discrimination by dismantling the institution of slavery. What things did they do that worked? What can we do today that's similar? A lot of hope and even some workable solutions have come from these studies of our spiritual forebearers, those great people of the past who wrestled with and eventually overcame problems similar to those we deal with today. Heck, when we go looking in history, we even see proof that looking in history works. Martin Luther King Jr. learned from the past. His nonviolent protest methodology is well known to have been inspired by Mahatma Gandhi and was known to have some success, although we are still fighting that fight today. And even still, today, the pro-democracy movement in Algeria follows in both Martin Luther King Jr.'s and Mahatma Gandhi's spiritual footsteps, using peaceful protest tactics to try to get the reins of power out of the hands of the military and into the hands of the people. But the thing is, on top of everything from fake Algerian democracies to a global pandemic, we also have almost unlimited access to that history. And just like Helen and Grandpa Joe from the Wonderbox story and, the summary that we put online, sometimes we find out the person that we really wanted to be, that great person, did some really not so great stuff. Now, when it's a beloved friend or family member you unexpectedly learn has a troubled past, it's pretty easy to forgive them as Helen did. You can look at them and what they've done for you and see who they are as a person to you, now, today, with all these things we know about respecting others and respecting the environment. But when it's a historical figure, a great person that you've idolized and studied, whose philosophy and actions have helped shape and define who you are as a person or help shape and define who you are as a faith, how do you navigate that when you find out that they didn't do so good? Do you, as we say today, cancel them, considering all their good actions inevitably tainted by the bad actions? It's not always an easy thing to answer. One of the first historical UUs that I learned about was Thomas Jefferson. Not surprising, given that I grew up in East Tennessee, and it was, at the time, just as Georgia is, in the Thomas Jefferson district of the UUA. It's not called that anymore. The Thomas Jefferson I first heard about was pretty cool. Like, I heard in church how, he went through the Bible and he took out, different things that contradicted each other or didn't seem necessarily possible, and just distilled it down to what he thought the philosophy was. I mean, come on, he wrote the Declaration of Independence. Teenage me learned all about the fact that he had slaves and had a child with a woman who was his slave, and well, that was less than cool. Still, the guy must be pretty okay if the UUA named a district after him, right? Well, not going into the politics of it fully, but we're not called that anymore. Unsurprisingly, UUs as a whole definitely knew a lot more about Thomas Jefferson than I did as a child. 2011 saw the name change happen. Michelle Bates-Dakin wrote in the UU World magazine, proponents of the name change claimed that even though Thomas Jefferson argued eloquently for religious freedom, he was a slaveholder with troubling views of Native Americans and women. In addition, they argued he was not really a Unitarian, although he has often been identified as a famous Unitarian. So yes, he was a crappy person. I mean, he didn't carry out the Trail of Tears, that was Andrew Jackson, but he did detail the exact plans for it. That's not someone I really want to look up to. But, as the article alluded to, and as we all know from having studied history, I'm sure, he was extremely instrumental in establishing the foundations of the society we have today. The society that, for all its flaws, does allow us to have religious freedom, to practice this quirky, eclectic religion we call Unitarian Universalism. So should he get some credit for that? I would say yes. Give credit where credit is due and censure where censure is due. Reflect upon the words he wrote and enjoy the Jefferson Bible, but don't be blind to the intrinsic biases of a slaveholder who planned the Trail of Tears. The repercussions of his decisions, of course, continue to echo today and have directly contributed to many problems that still affect us. So there's the answer, right? Don't name things after jerks, but acknowledge that jerks can get things right. Relatively simple, right? Yeah, no. So how about another historical semi-Unitarian Universalist? Jane Addams was officially Presbyterian until her death, but the overwhelming majority of church services she attended as an adult were Unitarian Universalists. She openly lived with her partner, Ellen Gates Starr, who publicly identified as a woman-loving woman in the terminology of the time. In the late 1800s, that kind of took a lot of guts. Jane Addams worked hard to get Hull House going in Chicago, a place where your body's health and your mind's intellectual stimulation were regarded as equally important. She felt strongly and deeply that everyone had the capacity to be equal, that everyone longs for beauty and knowledge. She did her best to elevate the tastes and desires of everyone who came to Hull House by exposing people from all walks of life to high culture. She's regarded today as one of the founders of patient-centered nursing and social work and modern-day preschools and daycares. Pretty cool. Pretty awesome. We got that in our history. She also led a small-scale, Chicago-based public crusade against dance halls and prostitution, which she considered one and the same. Dance halls were one of the few places where women in the late 1800s and early 1900s could just go and let loose. Letting loose back then looks a lot like just dating today. Jane Addams firmly believed that a woman letting a man buy her drinks, food, and dance hall tickets was highly immoral. She worked hard to legislate dance halls away. She's been condemned by feminist historians as being a bigot for this, for someone whose main life goal was to uplift the downtrodden, disenfranchised people by giving them tools to help themselves and teachers to get them started. She sure was quick to write off a segment of the population that is well known to be highly disenfranchised. So for all the steps forward she took in responsible community service, she sure did work hard to halt that particular form of women's liberation. I mean, it's been over a century and we're still fighting that prejudice. So when it comes to idealizing someone and looking to past solutions, Jane Addams is still a much more palatable candidate than Thomas Jefferson. But just like with Jefferson, you have to take care. Put Addams' words and her works in their proper context. She deserves the praise and adulation, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't learn from her mistakes. The situations that both Thomas Jefferson and Jane Addams faced, and the world in which they faced them, have shifted and changed. We can respect and seek to emulate their problem-solving techniques without embracing the various isms, like sexism and racism, that often made them see a problem where there wasn't one. When it comes down to it, we have to think for ourselves. I mean, Thomas Jefferson had a vision for America. He and others guided us down that path. We Unitarian Universalists who live in America centuries later have found some parts of that path to be good, but we have found other routes we like better when it comes to things like how we treat people with lots of different skin colors. We can't take credit for the good things he did, but we can seek to emulate them. We aren't responsible for the bad things he did, but that doesn't absolve us from dealing with their repercussions. Ultimately, accepting that can do us the most good. If we can accept that the people in the past whom we idolize can both do great good deeds and also get things really, really wrong, Maybe we can then learn to accept the failings in ourselves. We can learn from their mistakes and try our hardest to make sure that when we make them, we make different ones. When I look at history in that way and in that manner, it seems to me that delving into the troublesome aspects of the past is really, honestly and truly, just one more way of living out the fourth principle, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And personally, I find that beautiful.
Marginal Wisdom by Leslie Takahashi. They teach us to read in black and white. Truth is this, the rest false. You're whole or broken. Who you love is acceptable or not. Life tells its truth in many hues. We are taught to think in either or, to believe the teachings of Jesus or Buddha, to believe in human potential or a power beyond a single will. I am broken or I am powerful. Life embraces multiple truths, speaks of both and of and. We are taught to see in absolutes, good versus evil, male versus female, old versus young, gay versus straight. Let us see the fractions, the spectrum, the margins. Let us open our hearts to the complexity of our worlds. Let us make our lives sanctuaries to nurture our many identities. The day is coming when we all will know that the rainbow world is more gorgeous than monochrome, that a river of identities can ebb and flow over the static, stubborn rocks in its course, that the margins hold the center. And now we'll sing hymn number 1037, We Begin Again in Love.
For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible,
we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time we have struck out in anger without just cause,
we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
for each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others,
we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
for falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit,
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
for those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
Our congregation is committed to creating a more compassionate world. To this end, each quarter we split our plate collection with an organization nominated by the people in this congregation and selected by our Give Away the Plate committee. Our fourth quarter recipient is Lost and Found Youth, a remarkable nonprofit organization that seeks to alleviate homelessness for LGBTQ young adults ages 18 to 25. They provide temporary housing, food, clothing, case management, counseling, life skills training, job readiness training, linkages to physical and mental health care, and recreational opportunities. Our plate contributions also support the shared ministry of this congregation, so I ask that you please give generously to support the work of this important ministry in our wider community, as well as the vision and mission of our congregation. As we listen to our pianist Brian Bishop playing Für Elise by Beethoven, you will see on the screen ways to contribute to our offering via PayPal, Venmo, or by mailing a check payable to UUCG in the address shown. If you are worshiping with us for the first time, your presence here today is a generous gift to the community. You may choose to let the plate pass. The offering will now be most gratefully received. May the generous gifts received this week move us towards realizing our vision of a more connected and compassionate world. And now, please join me in offering gratitude this morning. I am grateful for Worship Associate Sherry Bailey for helping me with getting all this together, and also the tech team, Christiana McLean, who is also immensely helpful in organization and is serving as our Zoom manager, I believe, with Tony Nastri. I may be incorrect on that. And also Dan Kelly, Justin Miller, and Alex Hebda have managed our video and sound. Thank you all so much. Now it's time for our call to connection within our congregation and beyond our walls. If you are new to our congregation, If you haven't yet done so, please sign up for our weekly e-news and monthly newsletter by sending an email to info@uucg.org. Want to watch past UUCG services? Check out our YouTube channel. There is a delay in getting services posted, but they should all be current by the end of the week. And if you're looking for a way to be of service today, we have the food collection. Items be dropped off at donation at the church from 2 to 4 p.m. That does happen on the first Sunday of each month. Also today, the Green Team is hosting a film screening of the documentary film, The Condor and the Eagle. You can join via Zoom at 1 p.m. You can find the link to join the website on the calendar. And now it's time to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish these flames, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now please join me in singing 1060 as we sing of hope and joy with words and music by Elizabeth Alexander.
As we sing of hope and joy today, some know only anguish and despair. But when we lift our voices in this way, while some have pain and misery to spare, if a grumbling world we would renew, we must sing no ordinary song. If some noisy calm will never do, but every breath compassion must belong. Let this soil our greatest hopes contain, laughter of a well-fed childhood's tune, for every heartbeat its refrain, its harmony from peaceful cities tune. Sing of joy while hammering each nail, sing of hope while pulling every weed. So shall we sing together and prevail, may every hallelujah bear our seed.
Our closing words today are In Troubled Times by Stephen M. Schick. From the loneliness of troubled times we come,
To discover that we are not alone,
into the dwelling place of togetherness we come,
to collect remnants of hope,
from fear that all is lost we come,
to discover what will save us,
into the comfort of each other's arms we come,
to feel the strength that has not yet vanished,
from darkness we come,
to wait until our eyes begin to see,
into the refuge of fading dreams we come,
to remove illusions and focus on new visions,
from despair that walks alone we come,
to travel together,
into the dwelling place of generations we come.
to pledge allegiance to being peace and doing justice.
Our service has ended, and now our service to one another and our wider community begins. Be well, beloveds. Keep masking, get vaccinated if you haven't, and reach out to connect with others. Reverend Jan will be back March 13th.